Now you need to take out your book, and we will not go much into the details of the theory given in the book. So let's take a brief look at this. This is simply whatever we have studied now. It talks about the objective function and the constraint function, and lastly it talks about what are the methods of linear programming, what is the definition of that. Then it talks about the application areas of linear program. Okay, so most of the students might be thinking that this is the old syllabus book and we are under new syllabus. So let me tell you that all these theory are very similar to you in the intermediate level. So in both old and new syllabus, so it doesn't make any difference. Word by word it is similar. Okay. Now it talks about the application areas of linear programming. So in which all fields you are supposed to use linear programming, about that it speaks here. So the first point is industrial application. To solve a variety of industrial problems, you need to use LPP, and here the general objective is to determine a plan for production and procurement in the time period under the consideration. Okay, so it talks about how to plan your production in a effective and efficient manner, and also how to procure all the resources needed for this. So some of the examples of industrial applications are product mix problem, production scheduling, production smoothing, blending problem, transportation problem, production distribution problems, etc. I am not going much into the details of these things because if you give it a read, then you will be able to understand everything. Now we are talking about the management application. How can you use LPP in the managerial level? So this is what it talks about. In the portfolio selection, obviously in portfolio, what do? We need to manage our money. So in case of portfolio, what is the limited resource? The limited resource is the amount of fund available with us. And how can you distribute the fund to maximize the return or to maximize the profit? That is what we are talking about, right? Similarly, financial mix strategy, profit planning, media selection, traveling salesman problem, determination of equitable salaries, and staffing problem. All these things can be solved by linear programming problems. You simply try to remember these things because you might get MCQ on this. Otherwise, there is a very less chance of getting theory questions from this chapter. Now it talks about miscellaneous application, where it talks about your airline routine, diet problem. Okay, we have a few questions on diet also, administration, education and politics, and form planning, etc. Now, administrative applications of linear programming it talks about. Then non-industrial applications of linear programming, like in case of agriculture, in case of environmental protection, urban department, and facility location. In this case also you can use linear programming problem. And lastly, further applications of linear programming are in case of structural design for maximum product, and in the balancing of assembly line production. Then also in the scheduling of military tanker fleet and all these things. These are not very important. Then it talks about formulation of linear programming problems we have already learned. Then there are a few definitions. You can simply understand this by giving it a read. And then it talks about the limitations of linear programming. Right? After this, we will start with the first question of our linear programming problem chapter. So I know this is the old book, so here it is written as illustration 29, but in the new syllabus, this is the first question, first illustration, right? So the question says, a chemical company produces two compounds A and B. The following table gives the units of ingredients C and D per kg of compounds A and B. So here in this case, A and B, these are the finished goods, right? And in this case, C and D are what? They are the raw materials, right? They are the raw materials. So the units of ingredients of raw materials C and D per kg of compounds A and B, as well as minimum requirement of C and D and cost per kg of A and B. So here the cost per kg of A and B is given to us, and similarly it has asked you to write down the problem mathematically for minimization of cost. So by reading the question, we can say that what is the objective of this? The main objective is to minimize the cost, or simply minimization of cost. Now in this case, what do we need to do? So here, what will be the objective function? The objective function will be minimize z, that is equal to what? The cost, and the cost is given to us, right? So before understanding the objective function, we need to take that let x1 be the number of units of A and let x2 be the number of units of B, right? So how many units of x we need to produce? X1, and x2 number of units we need to produce of product B, right? So here the objective function will be how much? Will be what? So what is the cost? Cost we need to minimize. So the cost of 1 kg of A is how much? 4. And what is the cost of 1 kg of B? It is 6. So how many units we need to manufacture of product A? X1, and this is X2. So here in this case, we know that this is the total cost of A and this is the total cost of B. And we need to manufacture the total cost of A and B both. We need to reduce that. This is the objective function, right? Now, after the objective function, we need to talk about the constraint function. Do not use these shortcuts in the examination. I am doing this for to make the class faster. Okay. So here you can see that I have written here. You have to find out the quantities of A and B, which are the finished goods, which would give a supply of C and D of a minimum cost, right? So here in the table it is given that for 1 kg of A, we need 1 kg of C, and 1 kg, or we can say 1 unit of C and 3 units of B. Similarly, for 1 kg of B, we need 2 units of C and 1 unit of D, and the minimum requirements are given here. So we can simply write it as. So while formulating the constraint functions, we need to understand on which component restrictions are there. So here the restrictions or the limitations are on. So what is the amount of C and D ingredients both, which we minimum need to have? Like what is the minimum requirement of C and D? Restrictions are on C and D, that is minimum supply. At least this much of supply of C and D must be there. They are 80 and 75, right? So the constraint functions will be what? To manufacture 1 unit of 1 kg of A, we need how many units of C? 1 unit of C. So it will be X1 plus we need 2 units of C to manufacture 1 kg of B. So this is X2, right? And this has to be more than equal to 80. Why are we talking about more than equal to in this case? Because we need to have at least this much. We are talking about the minimum supply here, right? Now, in case of this is for C. Similarly, when we are talking about D, it will be what? 3x1 plus x2, because only 1 unit of D is required to manufacture 1 kg of B. So this is 3x1 plus x2 and it will be more than or equal to 75. Right? So these are the constraints on C and these are the constraint on requirement of D. Okay. So in this case, what will be the non-negative function? The non-negative function will be x1 and x2 both are more than equal to 0. Right? So this is the non-negative function. This I have written only for understanding. In the examination, you have to write the entire statement. Okay. Coming to the next question, which is illustration 30 in old syllabus and illustration number 2 in your new syllabus. So the question says, a pension fund manager is considering investing in two shares A and B. Whenever we are talking about investment, so in this case, we need to keep in our head that fund is the limited resource. So anyway, we have to either maximize the return or we have to minimize the fund or minimize the amount that is to be invested, right? It is estimated that share A will earn a dividend of 12% per annum and share B will earn a dividend of 4% per annum. The second point says that growth in the market value in 1 year of share A will be 10 paise per rupees 1. That means 10 paise per 100 paise, which is equal to 0.1 rupees. So the growth of share A in 1 year is 0.1 rupees. And in case of B, what is the growth? 40 paise per 1 rupee invested. That means 40 paise per 100 paise, which is equal to 0.4 rupees. Right? The pension fund manager requires investing the minimum total sum which will give a dividend income of at least 600 per annum. So in this case, what will be the objective function? As it already says that investing the minimum sum or in what is the minimum fund that we need to invest, right? And the dividend income of at least 600 per annum. So the dividend income should be minimum 600. It can be more than 600 also, but it has to be minimum 600 per annum. And the growth in 1 year of at least 1000 on the initial investment. So in 1 year, what will be the growth amount? At least 1000 rupees shall be the growth amount. Understood? You are required to state the mathematical formulation of the problem which will facilitate computation of the minimum sum to be invested to meet the manager's objective. Obviously, so we need to formulate the problems or formulate the linear equations which will help us to compute the minimum amount of sum that needs to be invested, right? So that the manager's objective will be met, right? So let's start with the solution. So the question says that it is estimated that share A will earn a dividend of 12% per annum and B will earn a dividend of 4%, which can also be written as 0.12 and 0.04. And what is the minimum dividend income? It says that at least 600 rupees shall be earned, right? This is the minimum dividend income. And what is the growth amount? Growth amount is 10 paise per 1 rupee, which is equal to 10 paise per 100 paise. 1 rupee is 100 paisa. So it can also be written as, if we convert this into rupees, so it will be 0.1 rupees and here it is going to be 0.4 rupees, right? And when it comes to the growth, so in 1 year, at least 1000 rupees growth must be there on the initial investment. So the minimum growth is rupees 1000, right? Now, here we need to find out the objective function and constant function. But before that, we need to understand that we need to understand the amount that is to be invested. So in this case, we need to decide that what will be the minimum amount that has to be invested. So in this case, let the amount invested on share A is x1 and the amount invested in share B is x2, right? So what will be the objective function here? The objective function is to minimize the amount of fund invested, minimize z, that is equal to x1 plus x2. Here there is no need of any numbers because obviously these two things are the funds. They denote the funds, x1 plus x2, right? Now we are talking about the constraint functions. Constraint functions में क्या होगा? Dividend we have seen that 0.12 is the dividend in case of share A, right? And what is the amount that we are going to invest in share A? That is x1. So the dividend income shall be how much? 0.12 x1 plus 0.04 x2, right? This is the total dividend income, right? The total dividend income. And we are talking about the minimum income. At least this much should be there. इससे ज़्यादा भी हो सकता है. It can be more than 600 also, right? So in this case, what will be this? इससे ज़्यादा भी हो सकता है. At least ये होना चाहिए. So what is the minimum value of these two? Out of this and this, which is the minimum value? This is the minimum value because at least this much of return should be there. So यहाँ पर क्या हो जाएगा? More than or equal to 600. This is very important. You need to understand कहाँ पर more than लगेगा, कहाँ पर less than लगेगा, right? So this is the first constraint function. What will be the second constraint function? It talks about the growth function. So growth function is what? 0.1 x1 plus 0.4 x2. And again here also the minimum income is 1000 rupees. At least 1000 होना चाहिए. So it is what? More than or equal to 1000. Right? More than or equal to 1000. In this case also, why it is more than and equal to? Because at least इतना होना चाहिए, इससे ज़्यादा भी हो सकता है. Right? I hope this is clear. And then apart from that, the non-negative function will be what? x1 and x2 both are more than or equal to 0. They are not negative. Right? I hope this is clear now, this question.